Hi everyone, Al the Psych here. I'm going to do another video, part 3 of the practical art of suicide assessment. This is by Shea from 1999. This is for informational purposes only. Okay, so let's jump right into it. An interesting point the author makes is that for some individuals, as their depression begins to improve, the likelihood of attempting suicide increases. And I remember this actually being brought up when I was going to school decades ago. And really, it's kind of like, why is that? Well, the author says the reason for this may be that the individuals regain energy and the initiative to act with the suicidal energy. At least that's the idea behind it. And I think, this is my own speculation here, but I imagine this might be related to when individuals start an antidepressant. The first few days, there's an increase in the likelihood of suicide attempts, at least with younger individuals. And I think 11 days might be the marker there, but I'll let you do your due diligence and check on all of that to make sure that's correct. And I think there was some issue with some of the psychiatrists kind of cutting back on actually administering SSRI because, the increase in suicide attempts during the first few days. But then you kind of miss out on the benefits that you get with the SSRI past those 11 days. Anyway, I'm going to let you look into that part. That's a whole nother issue. Okay, now one thing the author indicates is that how the clinician responds to and presents information to the client may help elicit more information. So if the client is non-judgmental when a client shares information, the client may be more willing to share further information. Okay, it kind of makes sense. Now, the author gives an example of how a therapist could initiate a conversation. So it might be something like, sometimes when people are feeling very depressed, they will notice that their interest in sex drops off dramatically. Has this happened to you? Okay, so the clinician here is normalizing the behavior, making it easier for the client to discuss the situation. It's kind of that, the misery loves company sort of scenario. So if the client understands that, okay, I'm not alone here, this is something that happens to a lot of people, they may be much more willing to share information. Okay, and so this technique can also be used for assessing suicide risk. So if the client presents with depression, the therapist can state and ask, sometimes when people are depressed, they think of committing suicide. Have you had thoughts like that? And again, it tends to help elicit information when individuals know that there are other people in the same situation. And the therapist is just kind of normalizing it. It's not like, oh my God, are you serious? No, it's like, this is what happens sometimes. It's kind of a matter of fact sort of a way of presenting information. And finally, the author also presents the case approach, which is the chronological assessment of suicide events. And there's 4 components. So number 1, the presenting suicidal ideation and behaviors. Okay. 2 would be any recent suicidal ideation and behaviors over the previous 8 weeks. So you're just going back 8 weeks. 3 would be past suicidal ideation and behaviors beyond 8 weeks, so further back. And then 4, you actually kind of jump right back into the present and into the future because it's immediate suicidal ideation and future plans for its implementation. Okay, and I'm not going to go over the details of the case approach. You can get that information online, much more detailed than I can present. There's plenty of information on it. But the thing is that it does seem to bring to the surface vital information that, may be missed otherwise. If you're just talking about what's going on now and then you don't go back, 8 weeks or even beyond that, you might not have a real good history of what's gone on with this individual. And finally, the book, while over 20 years old, I think has some excellent information in it, a lot of details and strategies in terms of how to glean more information from individuals who, maybe are a little hesitant about talking about some of the ideas or behaviors that they've engaged in terms of suicide and suicidal thoughts, etc. Okay, and that's it for this video. Thanks.